Dr. Nicole, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Jake. It's good to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, I've been following some of your work on social media and especially what you do in sports psychology, what you do with gratitude and coming that we are airing or recording this right now in November, and this episode's airing early December. We're kind of coming out of 1 month of gratitude, and hopefully that carries over for a lot of people. But December shifts a lot of mindsets into well, what do I don't have? What do I want for the holidays? Gimme, gimme, gimme. And so I'm looking forward to having the conversation around gratitude and the importance of it. But before we dive into that, to give our listeners just a little bit of context, tell us about what you do right now, where you're located, and help kind of paint a picture of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So I'm currently located in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I am the director of sports psychology at the University of Massachusetts. So I provide mental health services and performance consultation to our student athletes and teams. And I also occasionally see private clients on the side. Prior to my position here, I was in a faculty role down at Florida State University in their sports psychology program. So I just moved up to Massachusetts in June, and it's been an adventure with just the whole pandemic situation, but I'm enjoying it. So I am a licensed psychologist, and my specialty is working with athletes and other performers to optimize mental health and well-being and how that can enhance performance on the field.
I love that. And what I find unique about just the work you do is I feel like you flash back 20 years and no one's really talking sports psychology. I know, like, when I was playing, like, it really wasn't something you talked about. And if you did, a lot of people saw it as woo-woo. But now more than ever, it's become pretty mainstream. And then you look at the last 10 months, and I feel like athletes, especially at the college level, even at the high school level, are in greater need for working with individuals because so many things outside of their control that, you know, sometimes they're used to dealing, but now they're losing seasons. They're not having the opportunities to play. Have you seen a spike in healthier conversations this last year around it, around just the need for performance, the need for sports psychologists on staff and universities and with teams, just due to so many things being out of their control?
Yes, I do, for sure. And I think it mirrors what we see, you know, just in society in general, not just in the performance sector. But this past year has presented so many challenges and so much adversity for everyone to have to adapt to and grow and grieve and cope with. And athletes have their own unique challenges in this current climate and environment. So I think that there is definitely more awareness being brought to these types of services. And also they're just as applicable, you know, when we're not, like, prior to 2020 and following 2020 and whatever may come. So I think it's really just normalizing the fact that we spend so much time on the technical, the tactical aspects of sport and performance, and that's for good reason. But there's so much that we're missing if we're not tapping into the mental component of sport and also taking care of our mental health and well-being of our players and performers.
One of the things I know you dial in on and do a lot of work around is gratitude, as I mentioned. Do you feel, maybe this year, 2020, it's harder now more than ever to be grateful for the mass general population in terms of how much time we spend on social media, how connected we are digitally? Do you think it's harder for us to be more grateful for what we have and what we've done and what we've achieved than ever? Or do you think it's always been a challenge and it's just a matter of daily practicing and reframing how we choose to look at our situation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I think it can go both ways. So in some ways, I've seen it be a greater challenge just with a lot of the struggles, the adversity that has been happening in this past year and even leading up to it, and just how how that takes a mental and emotional toll on people, and that it might be challenging to focus on the good and to feel grateful in the midst of all this this stress and uncertainty and bad things that happen in our world. And at the same time, I've also seen it go the other direction where, being in the midst of a global pandemic, it's really forced people to slow down, forced athletes to slow down and look around at the other aspects of their life and say, how do I get through this time? Who do I have around to support me? What other things can I focus on right now that I appreciate if I can't have practice or if I can't have competition? So I think the opportunity is ample to identify the good things and to be grateful, but it takes intentional practice, and that's what my research and specialty in gratitude for performance is focused on, is how do we get people to develop habits that promote gratitude so that we can bounce back more quickly in times of adversity. So it's not about pretending that everything is good or that we should be grateful for everything. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? Bad things happen, but it can be a mental skill and a tool that we use to balance things out and help us cope during tough times.
Do you see that a lot of the conversation or work is around reframing how we look at certain situations? And the reason I ask is one of the things that stood out. I saw you tweeted yesterday or Tuesday around the election, and your
Mm-hmm.
quote was that gratitude is not outcome dependent. And you
Mm-hmm.
listed the things you were grateful of to be able to vote and participate in. But the line of gratitude is not outcome dependent is something that stood out to me, because when we think sports and a lot of times we think business and life, the focus is the win. And we talk
Mm-hmm.
about the importance of working through the process and just focusing on the process. But that really takes it to a new level when you talk gratitude of like, you can try and work and work. And even if you don't win, even if you fall completely short, you can still have gratitude throughout that piece. Is how does that work, just out of curiosity, in terms of learning to shift our perspective? Because I imagine it's a daily challenge, but it's something that a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people at first glance might be like, well, why would I be grateful if I lose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, it's about consistency, and it's about developing skills for us to manage our emotions during the highs and lows. So we know that in terms of performance, we have sometimes when we're winning, we have sometimes when we're losing. The outcome fluctuates, our performance fluctuates. And one of the biggest challenges I see for performers is confidence, mood, satisfaction with their sport, enjoyment, um, all these things being affected by the outcome, right? And it's really hard to maintain a balanced perspective, to maintain a balanced emotional state when you're placing the everything on the outcome of performance. Now, obviously, with sport, we care about the outcome. It's not to say that that's not important or that we shouldn't care about it, but if everything depends on that, then our mood is going to be up and down. Our confidence is going to be up and down. Our self-talk is going to be up and down. Our motivation is going to be up and down. So there's so much that we can learn in terms of developing skills that help us to maintain some consistency in our emotional state when we're facing those highs and lows. So gratitude can be a way to do that, because it forces us to broaden our perspective, and it basically trains our brain to see the full picture, to identify the things that we might be missing when we're facing stressful situations or when we have a poor performance. Because naturally our brain is designed to focus on the negative. It's designed to detect threats, to protect us from threats, to keep us alive. And when we're not performing well, that hyper focus on the negative is functional when we're trying to physically survive in a life or death situation. But if our focus stays there, it makes it really challenging to grow and to look ahead and to maintain a positive mentality and a growth mindset, because we're so stuck in that negative frame of mind. So gratitude practice is really about training your mind to be able to identify the good things or the things that you can appreciate even in the midst of a difficult situation. So the reason I say it's not outcome dependent is because you don't have to be grateful for a bad situation or, sustaining an injury or losing a game. but you can still find opportunities to say, what did I learn from this situation? What can I be grateful for in terms of who was around to support me, the freedoms that I might have, the choices that I do have to make, or what's in my control, or even if nothing else, like what personal strengths am I grateful for that I've used during this time? So yeah.
Go ahead. No, keep going. Keep going. I love it. Keep going.
No, so I see it as a way to kind of train ourselves to look beyond our default. And that can be really important in the highs too, right? So we know, we've all seen examples when someone is performing really well and they get overconfident, or that emotion gets dysregulated in the heightened direction, right? And the impact that can have on a sense of groundedness or humility. And that can be just as detrimental to long-term performance as, you know, as the poor outcomes. So I think it gratitude also keeps us humble during the high moments, the successful moments. And not to say that we shouldn't celebrate them or we shouldn't be proud of them, but it helps us to look around and say, how did I get there? What helped me get there? And so it keeps us in this grounded place.
I've got so many questions I want to ask you off of this. The first, actually, I'm curious because you talk about gratitude being able to see the larger picture, being able to look at all these pieces. And the thing that stuck out about what you just said about, not getting too high and not getting too low during the midst of a performance type game situation, your focus has to be not necessarily on the big picture, but on just what's in your control, which is that next play. What is the balance in that of that larger gratitude perspective versus the I've got to be locked in on immediately what's right in front of me and what's in my control? Is it just in the performance setting and using gratitude differently in your preparation mode? Or how does that balance in terms of being able to be aware of the big picture, see the big picture, but in the moment you're so locked into what is happening now that you're not worried 3 plays ahead or what just happened in the last play, good or bad?
Mm-hmm. For sure. I couldn't agree more. I think in the moment when you're performing, like that focus has to be on the task at hand. It has to be present focus. And that's a huge challenge for performers, right? We're often focused on the last play that just happened, whether that went well or that went horribly, or we're anxious about the next thing coming up, or in those pressure situations. So by no means is gratitude like the only mental skill that we need to have to enhance performance. I think often I use it in the reflective process post performance, but also leading up to performance, and just taking some time to reflect on appreciating the moment that you're in right now and what that has to offer and how you've gotten to that place. It can be a way to center us and to increase mindfulness before performing, so that we are brought to the present moment and we're not thinking about the past or the future. But I think it can also provide a realistic assessment of performance in the reflection process, because like I said, you're getting more information. You're not just focused on the bad or what you need to improve, but you're focused on, okay, what can I improve? But also, what did I do well? What went well in the situation? And it might only be one small thing, but I believe that there's always something that you can identify to appreciate, to be grateful for, or to learn from any situation. And the more that we can do that completely and not just focus on one or the other, I think that gives us so much more material to work with for future performance.
I love that. Wow. And it's so interesting. I was interviewing the guest actually as people are listening. That was last week's episode, Ken Lubin. And he talked about from a very different perspective. He's not a sports psychologist. He has a staffing agency and is a highly competitive athlete in his 40s and 50s. And so as we were talking, he was talking the same thing about, he doesn't carry the pressure when he gets to the starting line of the race. It's all just like smile and enjoy it and be thankful to be there and have fun, because at that point the work's been done. And he talked about just how enjoyable that process is, and hearing you say that of the lead up to that, and being able to enjoy that so that you step into that performance, you're focused, but you're also grateful. It's great hearing, especially for our listeners, hearing it said a little differently last week, and then talked about it from that sports psychology perspective this week to help continue to connect those dots for them. I'm just curious, what sports did you play growing up?
I played a bunch of sports growing up. So I started with gymnastics. That was my first sport. And then moved on to soccer, basketball, field hockey in high school. Um, Also, I love skiing. I love surfing. And then in college, I actually decided to go out for the crew team and started rowing. So that was an adventure. And I would say that shaped a lot of my passion and desire to go into this field, was just my experiences as a collegiate athlete.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going. Did you struggle with gratitude as a college athlete, and is that what prompted you down this path of curiosity, or did you see it in other people and wonder why there was a disconnect that maybe you didn't have with gratitude and performance?
Mm. Yeah, I would say gratitude didn't really come into my sports psychology work until I was in my PhD program, and I was working with one of my mentors who was doing research on gratitude and how this impacted outcomes in therapy and how it affected people's mental health and well-being. And there wasn't any research being done in sport or in athletes, or there was very little, I should say, being done on how gratitude practice could help performers to maintain perspective, to deal with setbacks, to enhance their mental health and well-being. So I started getting really curious about it during my doctoral program. But I would say going back, gratitude has always been part of just my personal philosophy, the way I was raised, my spirituality. There's always been a heavy emphasis on giving thanks. And, as you said, appropriate during this month of November. But, that it's so important, and it's completely changed my life. And I see how it can drastically impact the way that we look at things, the way that we're able to cope with things. And so just because of everything that I've seen and how impactful it can be, I think it drives me to spread that and try and help people to practice it. And it can be a struggle. Like, I struggle with it too at times. And one of the things that I like to distinguish for people is that when we think about gratitude, we often think about this emotion state, right? Like this warm and fuzzy feeling of gratitude. And that's actually, that's a nice feeling. But we can't expect ourselves to feel that emotion of gratitude all the time. Like, we're going to feel frustrated, we're going to feel angry, we're going to feel sad, we're going to feel happy. Like, we feel a range of emotions, and to expect ourselves to feel grateful all the time is unrealistic. But what we can do is we can develop habits to train ourselves to mentally shift our focus to what's going well and pay attention more to those things. So it might be, reflecting on your day and trying to see the good, or write down some good things that happened. And you don't have to feel any certain way to do that. You just have to do it. And so I think sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking we have to feel a certain emotion in order to do these things, in order to identify what you feel grateful for, when sometimes the behavior, the habit has to be established before our emotional state gradually starts to change.
I love that. It's like the idea, you don't need the motivation to start doing the work. You just need to start doing the work. One of the things I'm curious about working with athletes, specifically with teams, is how do you encourage coaches to, I guess, encourage gratitude within their team and their culture as kind of that way of life? And the reason I'm asking is because I think there's a strong parallel with how coaches and build their teams, build their locker rooms, as well as managers and directors pour into their teams and their locker rooms within a company and organizational culture, and the importance of gratitude and everything you've shared today. Just for those leaders listening that may be like, well, I don't know how to get my team to be more grateful. I don't even know where to start fostering more of a culture of gratitude, which from a performance standpoint has so many benefits. Where would you just challenge our listeners, maybe as a small starting point, to where they can start injecting more of that gratitude into their workplace and into their teams?
Yeah, this is going to be a very easy and a very hard answer, but a very simple one. You have to embody it. You have to practice it. Like, you have to put in the work to enhance your own gratitude skills before you can expect or demand that other people feel more grateful. And it can actually be counterproductive when we try to force people to feel grateful. So, you know, we've probably all had that experience where someone's like, you know, you're venting about something, or you're expressing some negative emotions about an experience, and they're like, yeah, but like, look at all this good stuff that you have. Like, you should be grateful that it's not this way, or that there's, you know, all these other unfortunate circumstances, and you're so blessed. And it's not to say that that's not true, but we don't really respond well to that because we don't feel like our own emotions are being validated. So I would say resist that urge to try and tell people and preach to people that they should feel more grateful, and start developing a gratitude practice or a habit for yourself. And it really teaches you like what is challenging about that, but what is beneficial about it. And the more that you express gratitude and appreciation for others and to others and in front of others, the more you talk about it, the more that gets modeled, and it changes the culture by changing yourself. So you know, when people feel appreciated, you know, if you're a coach and you vocally share your appreciation for your player, or you build them up, or you encourage them, and you're giving them specific feedback on their strengths, and it makes them want to work harder. And we're so focused on improvement, which is important in sport, but it needs to be balanced with emphasizing people's strengths and affirming them and appreciating them. And when people don't feel appreciated, then it's division, it's frustration, motivation decreases. So I think the more that we can work on ourselves, it can create culture change by example.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you incredibly for sharing that takeaway. And it was a simple piece of direction, but obviously simple doesn't always mean easy. And for us to set the pace, it always starts by looking in the mirror. Nicole, this has been an incredible conversation. I appreciate you making time today to spend with us. Where is the best place for our listeners to follow your work and follow what you do?
Sure. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here, and I am grateful for this opportunity. So thank you, Jake. And if people want to get in touch with me or want to follow my work, I am on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is at Dr. Nicole, Nicole, Gabana, Gabana. So I am on Twitter, and you know, always open to questions or feedback. So thank you.
We'll be linking to it in the show notes. Dr. Nicole Gabana, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jake.